Renee reminds me that I'm from a place where the cricket team wears the baggy greens, and Tapung reminds me I'm from a place where the rugby team is the Wallabies. But if I'm to start to talk about the place I'm from, much like if we're to start to talk about human rights, I think we first need to name ancient human wrongs, and I think we need to name the story that underlines Australia. Underneath the name Australia is what you're seeing right here. Over 300 different languages and tribes, the oldest living, continuing civilizations in the world. And the problem with introducing myself as an Australian is that if we can't confess the blood of Abel calls out to us from the ground, we can't hear a better word than the blood of Abel that Hebrews 12:24 talks about. So I want to talk about that better word. And I want to frame for us the realities that the hospitality that you have shown to me as a stranger, as an outsider, as a foreigner, is prophetic. And part of the reason why Australia has such a hard time welcoming those people desperately seeking safety. Part of the reason why Australia, one of the richest nations in the world, is leading the world in leaving the human rights commitments that we made after the Shoah, after the Holocaust, that said never again will we turn back people in the face of genocide. We will welcome them. It is not a crime to seek asylum. Everybody has the right to find a safe place, and we will be the nations to welcome those who need safety. And in a leaked conversation, the Huffington Post shared that the American president and the Australian Prime Minister, and the American president said these 3 sentences in this order. That's a good idea. You're worse than me. We should do that too. What is currently happening in America has got everything to do with the fact that Australia's Genesis story doesn't start in Genesis 1, it starts in Genesis 4, when people arrived and Cain's killed Abel's, and the blood of our sisters and brothers on the civilization that we now refer to as Australia cries out to us. And if we deny that reality, we can't deal with the fact that at home we talk about if you break into a phone, you talk about hacking or jailbreaking. Australia's memory has been jailbreak in such a way that the story starts 250 years ago instead of 60,000, 70,000, 80,000 years. We cannot hear a better word than blood of Abel. And Australia has tried to cover up that reality. And we've covered it up with anthems, we've covered it up with flags, we've covered it up with monuments. We have forgotten the names of the places that I am from. So my name is Jarrod Saul McKenna. It is an honour to be with you. Saul is my mum's maiden name. My mum's side of the family were Russian Jews. My dad is a first-generation Australian. He was born just outside of Belfast. And I live on Whadjuk country, where the Noongar people have now welcomed me, despite the fact that I have benefited from the sin of others. And part of my salvation and what I want to offer as a word of liberation for all of us is that white supremacy coming to an end because of the resurrection is not just good news to black people and those under apartheid considered coloured people. It is good news to those who forgot their ancestors and stories to give up their identities to become white. Because the default setting of the land that I live on is not those like me who are melanin challenged. My 6'5" adopted son, who looks like people of the land and the sun, he gets asked all the time, where are you from? And sometimes that question in my neighbourhood means what tribe you're a part of. Sometimes that question means that you're not white, so what kind of Australian are you? Because the default setting has somehow become those who stole the land. Lilla Watson is an Aboriginal woman, and she expressed the wisdom of her cultures up in far north Brisbane, Murray country, when she said, if you've come here to help me, you are wasting your time. But if you come here because you realise that your liberation is tied up in mine, then we can work together. what the blood that is better than the blood of Abel opens up for us is that though my nation was started with a story where we hid bodies, if we listen to the land, if we listen to the testimony of that blood, if we face that history, we can step into a better word than the blood of Abel, where we don't create an M against an us against the them that we hide under flags and monuments and anthems, and even as a pastor, I'll confess in churches, prayers. And some of that work for us has looked like things like hanging off the side of 6-story buildings because of court orders that we can't no longer go into the foreign minister's office to sit in, bring baked goods, bring flowers, and sing hymns and prayers until we see children released from indefinite detention. Sometimes it's looked like bolting ourselves to the front gates of the home of our Prime Minister until we see freedom for those who are detained on islands such as Manus, not even part of Australia, but Australia is using its aid, development and relief money to bully smaller nations to take those seeking safety, who Jesus promises he comes camouflaged as. And Australia is literally locked out our transformation. Australia needs a come to Jesus moment, and unfortunately we've locked Jesus up on these hellholes such as Manus and Nauru. Part of the reason why this time with you has moved me so deeply is that it's about incredible, ordinary people such as ourselves mobilizing around faith, hope and love, or to put it in language so it surprises us again, around a radical trust, around a new imagination, and around a new set of desires that seek first God's healing, justice, and God's reign of love. Common Grace is a movement that I was honoured to be a part of starting, and Common Grace is now over 40,000 regular Christians such as us who are mobilising online on behalf of the last, the least, the left out and looked over, because we know our Lord comes to us disguised as just those who we would otherwise lock up. Part of your testimony and welcome of me during the short time that I've been here has spoken to me a word that is so much better than the blood of Abel. Thank you for speaking to me about the blood of Jesus, which sets us free from hiding from that which, if we confessed, would welcome us into the kingdom. So I just want to thank you for your work and your witness, which I carry back with me to share as stories as we go home to do that humble, confessing business that is the joy of repenting and speak a better word than the blood of Abel. Amen.